Live from the nation's capital, Washington, D.C., the occupied nation's capital. It's day 44 of the military occupation of our great nation's capital. 7,000, at least 7,000 National Guard troops. Remember, on the inauguration day of Joe Biden, there were more combat troops in Washington, D.C. than there was in 1861, on March 4th, 1861, when President Abraham Lincoln took his oath of office just a couple of hundred yards from here. And that was, I think, 5 or 6 states have already seceded from the Union, and we were going to be in a kinetic war with the Confederacy in about 6 weeks. So this occupation, we continue to ask. Last night, after we've been hammered for a couple of days, I think they announced they had internal meetings, and the D.C. authority said at least until the fall of this year, fall of 2021, there will be occupation. There will be this huge fence with razor wire above it because of lingering effects of January 6th and also potential threats to lawmakers. If that's the case, Jim Jordan, the leadership in the House, McCarthy, Scalise, Banks, and Mitch McConnell have to come forward and get that information out to the people. What's the actionable intelligence? We need to find this out. We're going to have this graphic up and change it every day. Occupation Day 44. You're in the war room. It is Saturday, the 20th of February, the year of our Lord 2021. Now almost closing in on 37 million downloads in our podcast. We're live on Dish Channel 219, on Comcast Channel 113. 219, 113 in Comcast. We're on both the Bird and in cable. Of course, that's all through the great offices of Real America's Voice out in Denver, Colorado. Tremendous production team, particularly on Saturday when we do these specials. Really want to thank the entire team under Howard Diamond. Just a fantastic job. We're also on Gab. We are on Telegram, Rumble. I think we have near 400,000 subscribers on Rumble right now. We're on Roku, Pluto. Of course, in Mandarin, on G News and GTV, and we're blown through the firewall to mainland China, to Lao Beijing, to all of our compatriots in mainland China that are yearning to be free. Okay, we've got, today is very special. We're going to do we're bifurcating the show into 2 specials. Going to get you up to all the news and all of the activities that are potentially out there for this audience to basically engage in their agency. Right? This show is about your agency, about actually empowering you with news and information, intelligence that you can use, actionable intelligence that you can use in your life. And then we open up to you possibilities of where you can actually, for all free, to totally go to different sites, join up, become part of, get more information, whether that is about the California recall or it's about being a precinct committeeman. I want everybody in the live chat that have signed up. Over 100,000 people have hit that site. Tens of thousands have already signed up to be precinct committeemen. Want you to identify yourself in the live chat as a precinct committeeman to let us know that you've done it. And tell us about your experience. Starting next week, we're going to have the individual experiences of people that have signed up to be precinct committeemen, telling us the good and the bad. Remember, the establishment's not there to welcome you with open arms, and the reason is they're not crazy about the deplorables, and particularly the policies that the deplorables want to talk about. Okay, we're bifurcating the show into 2 things today. First is really about American sovereignty and about working class people of Hispanic, African American, Asian, and white, what's going to happen to the working class in this country with this radical bill that has been put forward by Joe Biden. The reason we're all over this bill is that this is signal. This is what they're trying to do. And by deconstructing it, we're showing you what they think of the country, where they think the direction of the country is going, and particularly what they think of you, and how you can combat that. We already know, partly because of the show, because of the audience of the show, that this bill is dead on arrival as a complete package. But they're going to try to break it into pieces and try to sneak it in. And, of course, Lindsey Graham, always popping up. Lindsey Graham's down at Mar-a-Lago this weekend to talk to the president. And remember, when you hear Lindsey Graham, just always equate him with the DREAM Act and DACA. He's down there right now. Trust me, he's working the president. He was one of the guys that has been trying to do it for over, I guess, ever since Obama started the program. but he was awful in the first year of the administration trying to slide this thing through with Dick Durbin. So watch Lindsey Graham. Okay, want to turn now to Peter Navarro. We're going to try to get Steve Cortez on later, but as Dr. Navarro did the definitive report, the Navarro report on the big steal, and of course that was all. Time Magazine put a cover story up about how they did it. Right, they're bragging about it. It was Dr. Navarro had done that, basically shown the receipts of exactly how they did it, where they did it, and to what number they did it to. Well, he's done the same thing. He was assistant to the president for manufacturing and trade, but really, essentially, he was the job czar. Right? Peter Navarro always had the back of the working man and woman in this country, in the middle class. And regardless of your race, regardless of your creed, regardless of your ethnicity, regardless of your gender, regardless of your sexual preference, if you're an American citizen, Peter Navarro, Dr. Peter Navarro, an economist from Harvard University, was there not just to have your back, but to put forward in those rooms where all the tough negotiations went on. Peter Navarro was always putting forward the plan for the American people. And that is why he's always been one of the closest advisors to President Trump and continues to be a close advisor to President Trump. Peter, I just want to get up on some news quickly before you get into your report. By the way, Dr. Navarro's done another report.
Sure.
The breaking news is being issued right now as we come on War Pandemic. We're going to go through it, deconstruct it. We're going to try to get Cortez on. Cortez is actually in South Florida. He's been over at Mar-a-Lago. We're going to try to get Cortez. Even if we do, Steve's going to be back on Monday to go through another cut of this. Two pieces of breaking news, and I've got to address you because you're an expert in both, Dr. Navarro. The first is that the Daily Mail and other sources, Wall Street Journal, they're all talking about the electric bills now are exploding in Texas. You were ahead of this even before you were ahead of China. You talked about, I think you had a book coming off I think it was your master's degree at Harvard, not your PhD. It might have been your PhD, The Dimming of America, back in the 80s. And you projected by 2000, where it really hit California with the Enron situation, that the country was going to go through the country that had the most energy in the world in every vector was going to go through massive energy shortages and particularly rolling blackouts and blackouts. Now this situation in Texas, because this, once in a 500-year storm. Of course, every other year you're getting a once in a 500-year storm. Now they're talking about today, the blackouts still continue to a limited degree. I think the power's back on, the water's out, but now people are being hit with electric bills. Can you just, and Revolver and other people are saying, hey, we're nothing but a third world country now. Walk us through quickly a snapshot of where you think we are in this entire mess down in Florida and throughout the country, and particularly, are blackouts going to continue?
Certainly they are, and that book I wrote back in 1984, The Dimming of America, basically laid out what was essentially a regulatory failure in that the way we structure, the way we build power plants here provides a huge disincentive to do that. So we've essentially, since the 80s, diminished our use of coal and nuclear powered generation, which are the central base load of our country. And we're sitting on a wealth of uranium and coal, which could give us that kind of security for our grid, yet we do not use that. At the same time, we open our grid, for example, to pieces of that grid imported from China at the cost of both jobs and, of course, the security of the grid itself. One of the first things Joe Biden did was repeal one of the most beautiful executive orders that has ever been written. I was personally responsible for that, working with the Department of Energy. It basically banned the purchase of bulk power equipment from the Chinese, and we did that because we knew, as a factual matter, that stuff was very dangerous, that it could take down our grid in times of possible conflict with China. So yes, we've got a problem on our hands. We do stupid things like getting into the Paris Accord, which lets China continue to build more coal power plants than the entire world will have. And at the same time, we're not dealing in a high-tech level with things like carbon capture. So, yeah, that one's going to continue. The Democrats are going to point their finger at the Republicans, and then the Republicans are going to point their finger at frozen wind turbines, and meanwhile, people are going to die, jobs are going to be lost.
Yes, this is one we have to get on top of immediately, and we got to force the issue here, particularly of the Biden administration, what they're doing about getting us back into Paris. They never want to equate all of this they're doing back to the existential threat of the Chinese Communist Party and what's happening to life here in the United States. One last thing before we get to the question about American sovereignty.
Sure.
One of the and for the audience out there that are the hardcore of the Trump base, because we pride ourselves in being the really the show, the reason the show is so powerful, it is a triggering mechanism for the Trump base that they can get to work and get active and join different groups and really put their shoulder to the wheel because they want action, action, action. Politico's lead story, I don't know if we can get it up if we have it. Politico's lead story this morning is how President Trump, his first step in actually coming back is to sit down, and people are going to make a pilgrimage to Mar-a-Lago that want to be congressional candidates, that want to be senatorial candidates, that want to be gubernatorial candidates, and he's actually going to have a vetting process that he's reaching out to a number of people to talk to them about what's the vetting process. We played the spot from Timken. We're not endorsing Timken. We said, hey, she's pure MAGA. We want to make sure everybody sees this. We're trying to raise the profile of certain people we think ought to be considered for that. You know, Peter and I have been adamant from the beginning that it does not help you to endorse guys that Mitch McConnell wants, because the guys Mitch McConnell want do not want what you want, President Trump. So, Peter, just overall, before we get into it, we got a couple minutes, just your thoughts on now the vetting. And if you were part of that, from a populist economic nationalist, what were the questions you would tell the president, hey, President Trump, make sure you ask him this?
Look, 2022, I think it's a near certainty at this point that we'll take back the House of Representatives. But if we do it with candidates that are kind of in the McConnell-McCarthy mode, that's really not going to advance the MAGA Trump agenda. So what the president is getting ready to do, I think, is essential. It's not that we just have to win that chamber back from the Pelosiites, but we've got to have a chamber that basically reflects MAGA values. Kevin McCarthy has to go. Love to see Jim Jordan as the majority leader in 2022. But, you know, I read Steve, and I think it's really good that the president is going to have a strategy on this. But Lindsey Graham is a problem at this point for me. Lindsey Graham is DACA. Lindsey Graham is the chairman of the Judiciary Committee that spent 4 years promising to prosecute people like Comey, Brennan, Clapper, Page, Strzok. He never did it. I don't understand why. Lindsey Graham is the guy who advised the president not to present an affirmative defense of the fact that election was stolen from him. And the fact that he flits around and still is in the Trump orbit, I think that's a big problem, because there's not a single piece of advice Lindsey Graham has ever given the president of President Trump that I've ever agreed with. I mean, he's just poison. So, you know, I think what look, Steve, this is serious stuff.
Don't step on.
It's funny, but it's serious.
Don't step on your headline. Let's take a break, because that'll be the pull quote right there.
That'll be the lead. Poison.
Tear
down that wall, Joe. Tear down that wall. Day 44.
Okay, we're going to take a short commercial break. We're going to return. Dr. Peter Navarro has put out a definitive report on the southern border, the economics. We're going to return with that in a second.
Navarro, Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Okay, today we're bifurcating the show. The first hour is about the attack on our sovereignty through this amnesty bill, immigration bill. Second hour is the secular left's real target, which is Christianity. We've got Andrew Torba from Gab. We've got Jason Jones, one of the preeminent filmmakers in the Christian world. We've got Bishop Audrey Shines. We've got individuals from China talking about this new article out that she fears more than anything, more than the United States, more than NATO, more than Europe, more than Davos. He fears the 300 million evangelical Christians and Catholics underground in China. We'll talk all about that in the second hour of the show. I want to return. Look, here's the purpose of the show. This is the most powerful show in all media because of the audience, not because of Raheem and myself and the great staff we have, and even the people like Steve Cortez and Dr. Navarro and the others we get on here on a regular basis, Boris Epstein, kind of the regular contributors. It's because it's the audience engagement. One of the things we try to do in empowering you and empowering your agency is to make sure that we present the world and the information in a way that other people don't, that you can start to see through it and make that actionable. Now, this bill is very interesting. How does he have a bill? They just drop a 400-page bill with, I think, a 68-page summary in the first days of their administration that combines La Raza, the most radical of all the left groups, right, which basically is wants to take back big sections of the United States back to Mexico, right, Mexican sovereignty, with Wall Street. And how do you combine the most onerous parts of the radical left with the Chamber of Commerce? That's in back of this bill. There's something going on in a very deep level about the sovereignty of this country. We've had CIS, a Center for Immigration Studies. We've had Numbers USA walk us through it. But we want to get down, as we often do, to talk about the numbers and the math. Because remember, the misdirection play they're always trying to do is turn us against each other because of race and ethnicity and religion and all that. When you get down to the basics, economics, it all becomes clear what's going on here. And there's no better person, really an individual who's dedicated his life and has been right on so many topics, whether it's the dimming of America back in the 80s about the problem with our power and our grid, or his books back in the early 2000s, early 21st century, that warned not just of coming crisis with China and the rise of China, but warned about, there's 50 pages or 25 pages in the book in 2006, I think, that warns about, guess what, pandemics coming out of where? Central China. You got it. 14 years ago, that would be Dr. Peter Navarro. So, Dr. Navarro, I'm going to turn it over to you. Walk our audience through what this bill, particularly let's start on the southern border. That's your report you're issuing today. What's the economics? What's driving this? Why are they combining radical left and Wall Street, La Raza and the Chamber of Commerce on a full-on assault on working class and middle class people that are citizens of the United States of America?
Steve, this is just yet another chapter in the book about how elections have consequences. And what I'm going to do is walk you through a report that I was going to release shortly before the pandemic hit on illegal immigration in America. But I postponed it because I started working on the pandemic. But I think we're releasing it today on your show because I think it's now even more important than ever to wrap our heads around what illegal immigration does to this country, particularly to the working poor, working classes of America. We have over 10 million Americans now unemployed, and we're going to have 10 million illegal aliens coming over the border over the next few years. And that's not an exaggeration. Let me show you. So what I'm going to do for your radio audience, I'll talk you through this, but for the TV folks, I've got some slides here, and they'll be up on the War Room and in the report. The report just is available right now on peternavarro.com. So let me start you off with some numbers here, the Bannon receipts. The number that grabs you is in 2019 we had 850,000 border apprehensions. Since we don't catch everybody, that means that over 1 million people, illegal aliens, came in that year. President Trump cracked down on that, got it down to 400,000. But my projection in 2021 and 2022 is going to be in the millions. They won't be apprehensions because they're not going to apprehend anybody. They're just going to walk over the border.
Hang on for a second. Give us that number again. When Peter Navarro gives us, but tell me what that number is again. What did you say?
All right, let's understand. We go to 2019. That was the height of when we had the issue. It was 150,000 border apprehensions. That's how many people we caught.
Yep.
And so you don't catch everybody. So what that tells you is well over 1 million came into this country. And just remember here that just about everybody that we, quote, apprehend, catch, is released into the U.S. So 2019 gives you an idea of the demand for crossing the border from illegal aliens. And as we open up the floodgates here, I will tell you that in 2021, 2022, we are going to see millions of illegal aliens come across the southern border. That's a fact. That will happen.
You're
Now,
saying
where
you're
are they coming from?
projecting millions.
Millions, yeah. No question about it. I mean, look, in 2019, there was over 1 million, and the only reason why that number went down is because of Herculean efforts by the Trump administration. But there's plenty of supply for the south of the border, and there's plenty of demand to cross that border. And the reason why I'm going to show you in this report, but let's look at where these are coming from. This is the map, essentially. And you go down to what's called the Northern Triangle of Guatemala, Honduras, and El Salvador. And between, there's well-traveled routes that come up into Texas and California and everywhere in between there. And what you have is over 90% of the illegal crossings are from those four places, Mexico and then the three countries of the Iron Triangle. Now, why that's troublesome, we hear the kind of about how this country is built on immigrants. The problem we have is that the folks, and this chart shows you, the folks that are coming across our border, well over half of them have less than a high school education, and about a quarter of them have English proficiency level. So people are crossing the border essentially uneducated, unable to speak English, and what they wind up doing is competing with blacks and, ironically, Hispanic Americans, often in our urban areas, the poor working class, whites as well in the poor working class, and it creates issues. And this is where they go. This is a map of the so-called sanctuary cities and states. The reason why sanctuary cities and states are important is because once you reach one of those places, you are treated as a citizen. You're not asked for papers. You're given whatever public services an American citizen would do. Now, the next slide here, one of the great speeches President Trump ever gave back in 2016 in June, pure MAGA speech. He said this wasn't a natural disaster. It was a politician-inspired disaster. I'm showing you 5 different pieces of legislation that basically have created this problem here. One, you have the birthright citizenship, where somebody who can come across the border without papers, pregnant, their child becomes an American citizen upon their birth, entitling them to everything that America has to offer. The sanctuary city phenomenon started back in the 70s and 80s. The 1986 Emergency Medical Treatment and Labor Act was really, really important, Steve, because that basically allowed illegal aliens literally free access to America's emergency rooms at our hospitals. And so what Medicare has wound up paying for health care. So instead of people going to doctors and things like that, our emergency rooms basically became the doctor's office of choice for illegal aliens, and that's put tremendous strain on our hospital system. The 1996 Personal Responsibility and Work Opportunity Act, pure Clinton. This one was under the guise of, quote, welfare reform. This law basically threw open the door for illegal aliens to enjoy virtually all of the public services that America has to offer in our local communities, police, fire, schools, whatever. And then at the same time, in that same year, Clinton issued these identification numbers for illegal aliens, which allowed them basically to legally cash paychecks and take home money so that they could be here. So we did this to ourselves. It was a Democrat regime. I'm sure that Biden, Harris are going to do things like this. But that's it. And here's another slide I want to show you. I got a few more after the break, but this one, every soccer mom in America needs to look at this one. Every taxpayer needs to look at this one. This is the cost per child for illegal alien education. It's 13 grand per child. Welfare programs cost about 4 grand. Emergency administrative service is about 6 grand per head. Total fiscal costs back then was astronomically, but it's just going to get worse. So every million more people that come in here, it's a significant amount are kids that are going to overcrowd our schools,
and
all that
and the
stuff.
healthcare. Okay,
so we'll come back to that.
Take a short
Yeah.
break. But this shows you the hypocrisy of the $15 minimum wage. What they're doing is setting up a permanent underclass by this legislation. We're going to be back with Dr. Peter Navarro, the president's assistant to the president, 45th president of the United States, Donald J. Trump, on manufacturing, trade, and jobs in a second.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Welcome back. Remember, we had Mark Akorian on yesterday from the Center for Immigration Studies. Said this bill really lays out that it's essentially the right of every person in the world to come and become a citizen of the United States, where it used to be that, hey, only citizens had that right? The outside world did not, and on a selective basis, we allowed people to come in here and become citizens. This bill is the most radical piece of legislation I think has ever been put forward. It completely guts internal enforcement, doesn't make any pretense about enforcement whatsoever. It's essentially an open borders bill. And it puts the entire burden of this on the working class and middle class citizens of the United States of America today. The beneficiaries are Wall Street, the global corporations, the radical left, the politicians that are bought and paid for by them. And that's why we are determined from the beginning. We told you this even, I think we had a segment on this before even Inauguration Day, that this must be stopped. Now, I will tell you the good news is I don't think this will go forward as a bill, but you've got the Lindsey Grahams of the world down in Mar-a-Lago, and trust me, they're going to be working, trying to break this thing up and force through segments and try to get it done in pieces. We're going to fight that too. Dr. Navarro, what's so shocking about this, in particular your report, there's a new report out by Peter Navarro. You're going to have total access to it right now. In fact, Peter, can you tell people how they can get it? Your report goes through so fundamentally, and the takeaway I've got is the audacity to put the burden of this on working class, essentially Hispanic and African American families on the Rio Grande Valley, in southern Arizona, New Mexico, California, and then in the sanctuary cities that are controlled by Democrats. This shows you they are callous about Hispanics and blacks in this country that are citizens of this country, that serve in the military. Heck, I think somebody told me a stat the other day. I think of rifle platoons in the Marine Corps, 50% are Hispanic right now, okay? These people are patriotic. They serve their country. And now this is opening the floodgates. Dr. Navarro, am I wrong in that? Is Wall Street and the corporations and the radical left all putting the burden on working class Hispanics and African Americans along the border and in the major urban areas in our country?
Steve, that bill would essentially consign blacks in America and many Hispanic Americans to being, I think, what you've called a permanent underclass. There's no way that low-income people in this country are going to be able to fight their way out of what's going to be a flood of millions and millions of poorly educated illegal immigrants that are coming in for their job. And here's the thing, it's like, why is this happening? I want to go back to this one slide that shows you 5 different laws, regulations, reasons why we have this flood of illegal immigration coming in. And you have to ask yourself, who benefits from this? Okay, so you got these sanctuary cities, you got our emergency rooms basically turned into doctors' offices, free doctors' care for illegal aliens. A little ironic since a lot of Americans can't get decent health care, but illegal aliens can in emergency rooms. You've got free access to all of public services. So who benefits? Well, we know that the Democrats want these illegal aliens to come citizens, and then the presumption is they'll vote for the Democrats. In some sense, it's an interesting proposition because we've seen Hispanics vote for Trump in record numbers because they understand this issue. But the other people who benefit, it's the corporate elites, it's the global elites that send our jobs offshore for cheap labor. But if they can have the cheap labor come across our border, then that apparently is okay as well. So let me finish just a couple of slides here that I think are worth looking at. One of the key things that drove this illegal immigration was a decision by a judge named Dolly G. And I'm showing you a graph now after her 2015 decision. You saw an incredible spike in cases and asylum claims. And the reason, Steve, why that's the case is because this judge, an Obama judge, of course, arbitrarily decided that if a family came across the border with a child, you couldn't hold them for more than 30 days, right? So this was the birth of two things: catch and release, but it was also the birth of basically using children as tools to pierce our border and break the law. And you can see that in the next slide. I'll show you. You've got, for your radio audience, you've got a descending line which shows the number of single adults coming across the border after Dolly G. It plunges dramatically, and then the upward slope are the families, so-called families coming, where a lot of times the kids are just rent-a-kids for any people coming across the border. So that kind of is what happened. And the last slide I want to show you here is also the drug seizure side of the whole thing.
Before the drugs,
Yeah,
before I just want to make sure everybody understands. There's no way you just come across the border now and just kind of wander through that. It's controlled by the cartels. This is a massive business, a profitable business for the cartels, the human trafficking aspect of it. So when Peter showed that map earlier, I just want to make sure everybody understands this.
Yeah, let me
we
put
are
that
not
map up for you,
we are
Steve.
not demonizing the people in Central America or in Southern Mexico that are coming up. We actually argue differently. They're actually rational human beings that are are responding to incentives. Right, the incentives is in El Norte. You've got all these freebies. And here's the point. The problems in the frontline nations, the problem in the triangle down there has to be solved. The solution to that problem cannot be put on the shoulders of working class Hispanics and African Americans that happen to be citizens in the United States, in the middle class and the taxpayers. Okay? That's not a solution. That's what the corporations want. They want your education to decline, healthcare to decline, and that's going to be your problem. Right? Because they're going to get cheap wages, higher margins, higher stock prices. The solution for the biblical tragedy in Central America is in Central America, and we have to, remember, Peter, we had talked about having that conference in McAllen, Texas, the Frontline Nations. That has to be sorted in Central America. But we've got to take away the incentive here to come across the border. And remember, this is just not pilgrims coming across. This is a racket. This is a business. There are politicians and the members of the federales, et cetera, that are in business with the cartels. Not all the politicians, not all the federalists, but this is an organized, big, very systematic business. Go ahead, Peter.
Let's do some math here. You got about 6 billion people on the planet. 6 billion. We got about 350 million people here. I would say about 5 billion of those folks want to come to the United States. Okay, so the idea of not having a secure border is flat out insane right off the face of it. But I mean, here's the problem. It's like every time another million illegal aliens come across the border, pretty much everybody in America's welfare goes down. It falls on the taxpayer at one end. It falls on blacks, Hispanic Americans, poor whites. in these menial jobs or lower income jobs or factory jobs. And if this continues, we get more and more like the Northern Triangle, and it's just an unsustainable equilibrium. And so this is why this report's important.
But hang on.
PeterNavarro.com.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I want to get to the report, but hang on. You just went across. The audience is sitting there going, gosh, every Republican guy that's run the last 25 years, all the Bushes, Marco Rubio, everybody, you just told me, they tell me immigration is the lifeblood. It's the lifeblood for economic nirvana. It makes our lives better. It makes us more prosperous. This is Republican globalist orthodoxy. They've preached for 25 years, along with the fetish they got for free trade, which is free theoretically. Ask Adam Smith, if you're not dealing against a mercantilist superpower like China. This is the crap they've been selling for 25 years. It's the reason we're in this jam. Dr. Navarro.
So this is the difference between Mitch McConnell and Donald J. Trump, okay? Between the traditional Republicans who like the tax cuts, who like the deregulation, but don't like the secure borders because it cuts off the flow of cheap labor to their multinational corporate contributors that make their political careers go. So what the Republicans do is they package illegal immigration under the guise of basically we need basically a labor force, and it's our, and you go back to the Statue of Liberty and all of that. But the most important thing is merit-based regulation. I showed you earlier, Steve, that the average level of the immigrants coming across our southern border is less than an 8th grade education, and they have an English proficiency of about 25%, okay? Those folks coming across the border are going to do one thing. They're going to compete against the working poor already in this country, and ironically, they're going to get better health care and services than the working poor in America as soon as they cross that border. So why wouldn't they? Perfectly rational.
Totally rational. They're rational people, and the drug cartels are rational. These are serious, sophisticated business people in these cartels. Okay, yes, they got muscle and bad guys, but they are rational, and they're tough, and they're brutal. Also, this is why Trump is winning in the Rio Grande Valley with these Hispanic working classes. This is why Perez, the head of the DNC, is saying, no. It's foreign intervention that's causing that. They don't really know the facts. No. Working class Hispanics in the Rio Grande Valley, in the hardscrabble Rio Grande Valley, they understand that wall and Bush and Trump's other enforcement mechanism, ICE and the Border Patrol, the heroic Border Patrol, the most Hispanic of all of our government operations or services, right, have protected them, and the jobs got better. And with Peter Navarro, not just the unemployment went down, the Holy Grail, increased wages, better opportunities, and increased wages.
And the Democrats' solution to this flood of cheap labor is to somehow raise the minimum wage. They felt like that's going to work. So, I mean, this is a crisis, Steve, that's going to be worse over the next 2 to 3 years than we've ever seen before by significant magnitudes of order, because it's Katie bar the door. You know, we can put razor wire and surround the Capitol building. I guess walls work up there. But that bill that's being put before Congress right now, I mean, I think the future of the Republic now is going to get down to Joe Manchin and Kirsten Sinema at this point. Come on over to the Republican side, but if you come on over, Joe and Kirsten, like, come over to the Trump side. Don't join Mitch and Mitt Romney and Sass and all those folks. And God, don't join Lindsey Graham.
Senator, that's why the demarcation today is not between Republican and Democrat. It's between populist, nationalist, traditionalist, and globalist, elite, radical, secularists. We're going to turn with Dr. Peter Navarro in just a minute on War Room Pandemic.
Rejoice when there's no more. Let's take down the CC.
with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room. Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Okay, what we're trying to do is give you inside baseball. Remember, yesterday when talking to Mark Krikorian of Center for Immigration Studies, they're giving briefings next week to members of Congress, Republican members of Congress, or Democrats if they want to, of all their analysis of this bill, and they're the top guys, the top think tank. We now have a commitment from them. You're going to get the exact same briefing. So next week, we're going to have the CIS congressional briefing, all of the slides and CIS here to present to you, because we want you to have the same information the decision makers have. With Peter Navarro right here, it's a 54-page report. Yes, you have a homework assignment, okay? This weekend, it's up on Peter's site. You got to go through it. 54 pages, but you're getting the exact type of thing that would go to the President of the United States or go to the Economic Policy Council. Or when Peter was in there fighting hard, these are the types of things that started the conversation, that built the intellectual infrastructure to make the argument so people could understand what's going on. Peter, talk about the structure of the report. What should people be looking for, and how do they get it?
Sure. Here's a slide here. PeterNavarro.com. PeterNavarro.com. You can get the report. It's released fresh off the Bannon War Room and Twitter. My real P Navarro is the Twitter handle. Let's use the rest of this hour here just going over kind of the top line here. There's one slide I did want to show you, which shows the drug traffic, which is this is old data, 2018. It's even worse now. But you have close to $3 billion worth of cocaine that traffics across the border, $2 billion of methamphetamine. And down in the lower right-hand corner, we have a population of about 350 million. So courtesy of China, which makes all the fentanyl, we have more than one dose of fentanyl for every American citizen, courtesy of the drug cartels and the Chinese Communist Party. And I wish Joe Biden was as effective at distributing the vaccine that Trump made as the Mexican cartels and the Chinese Communist Party are at sending fentanyl. Once again, Steve, elections have consequences. Stolen elections particularly have consequences, because I don't think the 2020 election, it was the will of the American people to throw open our borders to what's going to be literally millions and millions of illegal immigrants. And the one thing we haven't talked about, Steve, is that this new bill is just not just a southern border problem. It's basically going to also open the floodgates on the higher end to the tech workers, the call centers, all of that. So our millennials, who, as you described accurately, I think, as the new serfs, like the Lao Beijing in China and the serfs of Russia, they're not going to own anything. They're not going to have a decent job, because we're going to have a crush of people coming in and taking both the high-end jobs and the low-end jobs and everything in between. So elections have consequences, Steve. We're a 50-50 country right now, and I think that because we've lost control of all branches of government, including in some sense the Supreme Court, thanks to Roberts, this is going to be a very perilous 2 years, and nothing's going to be more perilous, I think, for domestic security than this open border that Joe Biden envisions.
Peter, we got about 2 minutes. Just your overall with the Chinese Communist Party, and now particularly with the kowtowing of the Biden administration, the chart you put up yesterday from the House report of how compromised across the board his national security apparatus is of being in business with China. Given this bill, the fight for American sovereignty, you've got 2 minutes to give a rally cry to our audience here to go to the ramparts. How important and how perilous a time in American history is it right now?
In my lifetime, which is longer than I want to admit on the air, I've never seen it worse right now, and it's because of that stolen election. We had a chance in a second term to basically complete our mission in decoupling from the Chinese Communist Party and standing up to their military adventurism. We had that opportunity. That is now lost. That slide I showed you yesterday was breathtaking. It 20 people in the Biden administration, all the offices that the CCP sanctioned, whether it's Pompeo at State or O'Brien at the National Security Council or me or you on the outside, those seats are now occupied by CCP sympathizers. So we had a chance to do that with Donald Trump in a second term. That's not going to happen. We had a chance to finish the wall and finally secure the border and use that as a way to getting to a merit-based system of immigration, which is the really only way that we can have a flow of immigrants into this country that lifts our fortunes rather than presses down the fortunes, particularly of our working class. So that's an issue. And then our whole foreign policy adventure, I think, is going to go south as well. And things like the Paris Climate Accord, things like Iran, whatever. But border security and fighting the CCP, those are two of the most critical legs of the MAGA stool, and they have just been cut out from under. Now, folks listening to the show, what I love about your audience is that they're action-oriented. They're going to write their congressmen, write their senators, go out and protest, organize. But what has to happen now is we've got to focus on taking back the Congress, but also moving state legislators in places like Arizona and Michigan and Pennsylvania, places that let us down, even though they were Republicans. We've got to clean those houses as well. My point is, this is a time for political action, Steve.
Okay.
We can't lay back and kick back because it's just going to lead us
real quickly. How they keep
Hobbesian life.
We got 15 seconds. How do they keep track with you during the day? What's your coordinates?
PeterNavarro.com, the website, and Real P Navarro on Twitter. PeterNavarro.com. And Real P Navarro on Twitter.
The homework
grab that report and share it with
the homework assignment is a report. We're going to be back on this on Monday with Steve Cortez and Peter Navarro. Okay, next we're going to have a special 1-hour special. Cheryl Chumley from the Washington Times is going to join us. We've got Andrew Torba from Gab, the CEO. Christianity, the real target of the secular left. All next hour on War and Pandemic.